Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming to check out the channel. Today, I'm happy because I've got a very accomplished guest, and he's also a really great guy, and I got to know him a little bit, and we're just going to chop it up a little bit. We're just going to talk about some different things that have to do with music, his experiences, and basically he's just going to give a little insight to things that we all find interesting. If you're here for the first time, welcome. And if you're returning, welcome back. My name is Will, and I'm going to go ahead and introduce to you Mr. Wiggly.
Yes,
Dominic Hawken. And he's here to give us a little bit of insight and perspective on his experiences. And really, we're just going to have a casual chat. This isn't going to be too formal. You know, maybe we get a question here or there that may get answered. If not, if we even have a single view, it would be great. If not, it's okay. So how are you doing today, sir?
I'm good. Thank you very much. Very, very good. Thank you very much indeed for having me on board. Well, it's really cool. It's a great system you've got running. It's really looks fantastic.
Getting there a little bit at a time. You know, it definitely has had its ups and downs. I had things working quite well at one point, and then I was coming into some weird technical issues. So then I went all in on a new computer with the i9 and everything, and went big on the RAM and just tried to solve this problem once and for all. We'll get there. You know,
it's definitely working. It looks great, and it's
thank you.
Anyone who's new to this, trying to get 2 or 3 people talking at the same time online can be a bit of a challenge, especially when we're kind of the other side of the world from each other. And this is just simple. I'm actually just I've opened a web page in my browser, and here I am chatting in near real time.
Yeah,
which is phenomenal.
StreamYard. I want to give a shout out to Inky at Damn Cat Studios. Her name's Lisa. She's a friend of mine. She mentioned StreamYard, and I just had to take a look, and come to find out this is a great platform. It doesn't do like 4K or any of that stuff, but geez, for free, you can't beat it. You can have a little banner down there, and which I guess I could get rid of at this point. But yeah, you can do like a couple people, I think 5 or 6 people. It's pretty great. So anybody that's trying to do something like this, StreamYard, go check it out. It's pretty easy. So at least I found it pretty easy. So and so I guess, geez, where do we start? I have some questions. I just want to make it kind of light and just to get it started, and then maybe we can have a little more serious, in-depth type stuff. But
sure.
What are you working on today? Like, what have you done
today? I'm still busy working at the moment on a sleep app, which is new for me. I should probably give you a tiny bit of a background so people understand.
Absolutely, please do.
From, I suppose. I've always never really had a job. I've always worked for myself or done music or something similar. But I used to play keyboards for Boy George very originally, just outside a Couch Club, which gives you an idea how old I am. And I did a lot of live stuff as a keyboard player. Then I moved into production and remixing in the first kind of big kind of house and dance boom in the UK. So I was working with people like Danny Rampling and Paul Oakenfold, who are quite big DJs over there. And gradually just expanded. I did a lot more studio work and ended up doing some songwriting. And I worked quite a lot in pop music as a songwriter, working with various artists, which has been great. And then I took some time out to concentrate more on developing an app in the last year or two, which is primarily designed originally to help babies sleep, and it's got a little bit bigger, so it's to help adults and children and babies sleep. And the reasoning behind that was basically to get, I've got a 7-year-old daughter, and it was such a problem getting her to sleep. And everything was rubbish. You look on YouTube, I couldn't believe it. There's 10 hours of tinkly bell music and stuff that if you look up lullaby. And I just thought it wasn't very good. It's almost like the music was a secondary to the app.
Right.
So I could do it better. And that's good. So that's called Snuggle Sounds. That's out now. And I'm back on the remixing tip. Very recently, I've been trying to get into film music a little bit. I've done a few bits and pieces in the past. So I've done a couple of small films for friends. And that's unbelievably hard, actually, when you're coming from
And even
a pop song background. It's really difficult, but really enjoyable, really enjoyable. So hopefully that might pick up a little bit as well. But at the moment, I'm still just, I think I might do another sleep app primarily geared towards babies. So a kind of junior version of the one that I have is probably next on the list, and Android versions, because this one's on the iPhone and iPad.
Well, anybody that's having problems getting their kids to sleep, that app is actually in the description. You can go down there and check it out. And if you want to get in touch with him, there's also his YouTube stuff is down there. So there's some helpful information to get in touch with Dominic. I couldn't even imagine what it would be like to try to coordinate something like that. I mean, I can't even get out of my own way to do a live stream, let alone, trying to like put together this giant project. And I guess so. You're working today kind of on this this new sleep app, or you're still working on the Snuggle?
I'm working on the Snuggle stuff. Actually, what I'm doing is some streams and some YouTube videos of some of the music within it and some alternative music.
Okay.
It's quite a challenge getting people to find the app, actually. There's a lot of it about, and so even trying to rise to the top of the searches, you're either paying quite a lot of money, or you're reliant on word of mouth to a large degree.
Right. So you might get one. You might get one out of this, maybe.
Yeah. Well, I mean, hopefully, this is going to hit 1 million views fairly soon. It's going to.
Oh yeah. Yes.
By the time you get Moby or someone on the next chat.
Oh,
no, yeah. I mean it's. We had a very small chat before the show, and you were saying about believing in karma and just doing things to see what happened. And I 100% agree with you. This is not. I don't expect this to become huge and massive. Obviously, it's always lovely when things do, but I've been granted enough luck in my life so far to be able to know that it feels like the right thing to do. The people who are using it, their kids and people are relaxing and sleeping. It would have been a sad day if I'd finally finished it after working on it for about a year, actually, all told. If anyone had listened to it and gone, it's keeping me awake, it's just
that would have been a problem. That would have been a big time problem.
And it's working, and it's nice to be able to have something out there which I've done from scratch. But I mean, in general, the stuff I would be doing, were I not kind of doing that, that's my day job really at the moment. I'm lucky enough to be able to work for myself doing that. But what I would be doing would be kind of like music-wise, more on the techno front at the moment. Really, I've done a lot of. I'm really into dub reggae, but
there's a video in the description that Dominic has done also with the Deluge, and your dub remix is down in there. It's such a good use of effects and such a good use of the, we can call it DAWless. I mean, whatever you want to call it. It's you're taking a prearranged set of effects and using it in a live way. That's really cool. And
Thank you. Yeah, well, that's exactly how I wanted it to come across. I've always been an in the studio Logic kind of guy, all the way through from back before it was Logic. I did some work with Steinberg way back on some of their code. I've always been a bit of a code head in the background. Funny enough, when I was at school, I had to pretend not to like code because it was so uncool. So if you wanted to be into music, you did not like computers. I'm 52, so it gives you an idea of what it was like back then. Nowadays, obviously, it's probably cooler to be into code than it is into music, to be honest. But
I think the gamer revolution.
But I've been a Logic fan forever, and it's always been that element of control, being in a computer. Love analog stuff as well. I mean, there is, I don't know if you can see there's a lot of analog kit around, and you can see processing.
Yeah, we can see some of that.
I tried to put together in here a small footprint studio of the kinds that I would be wanting to rent and work with. So instead of a big desk, there's 2 Neve sub mixers and 2 API channels. So at least I can record everything in stereo really brilliantly. There's a Burl A to D at the bottom stuff, and some how far down there's a Tube Core EQ there, Culture, what's it called, the Rooster 2 there,
man, that
and a Swift EQ there. So there's some really lovely that green thing. It's a Dominic culture as well. So there's some really lovely analog bits and pieces. But I've always been a control freak. I've always wanted to get everything into the computer and then to work with it. And then when that doorless word that you mentioned came up, it was more a case of, that sounds interesting, actually. This will force me to go off and change it up, really, because you do find yourself getting stale and stagnant and using the same hi-hats and shakers and all the rest of it. Oh, let's do a track. But actually what you're doing is using the same composite parts, really. And so it forced me to go and think about it and think out of the box a bit. So the stuff right there behind me is the Deluge and a couple of the boutiques, which I think are brilliant. The SH101 boutique is I've got an SH101 and I will use that one more often than that. And that's a little standalone, albeit, you know, quite highbrow. There's an SSL desk there and stuff, but quite highbrow, doorless setup. And it's actually forced me to just get out of the box in the nicest way, you know, really get out of the box that's forcing you into how you're creatively thinking.
Yeah, and like I was always curious with people what their creative process is, because really what I've found out, and I was telling you a little earlier, I've just learned about music over the last few years, and you know, not even knowing what a polysynth was or a monosynth or even what MIDI was up to 5 years ago. This is like a huge learning curve to be able to get into music and to do all this stuff. And, you know, reading into some of the history, you know, over the years, I know that you've been a part of Akai back in the day when they had that was the S1000. And, you know, that kind of stuff is like priceless to know that somebody has been through exactly what I'm going through, trying to test new things and trying to try routings and creative workflows. So how do you find like a creative, like if you're lacking like creative direction, how do you go about, have you ever like lacked a creative direction for something, or what is your process?
Oh, yes. Yeah, absolutely. I think knowing what you lack is really important, not just in music, actually. I've always managed to work with people who complement the stuff I can't do. You know, knowing what you're not good at, I think is really important. I mean, going back to what you were just saying, yes, I think Malcolm Gladwell calls it a tipping point, where you're kind of born into a moment where everything changes. So Bill Gates was born at the moment when suddenly computers kicked off, and he just got that wave completely. You know, I'm not comparing myself to Bill Gates in the slightest, comparing the times, right? And I'd been studying piano at school, which I was okay at. You know, I got to grade 8, but I was finding it quite frustrating. You know, it's okay, but you're given a sheet of music and you can play other people's music. And I was beginning to, you know, this is not going to be a long-term thing. Just when synths came out, which were more affordable than they'd ever been. So we're talking the Juno 6, the Poly 6. They just so in the shops already were Jupiter 8s, Jupiter 4s, Prophet 5s, and we're talking £3,500–4,000 back then for that kind of kit.
Did you ever get your hands on a CS8?
Proper money for these things new. Probably, maybe I've remembered that slightly high, but definitely way out of my budget. You know, where everything was over £1,500 over here, which would have been back then $3,000. And just suddenly the Juno came out, and it was under 1,000. I think it was about £750, so $1,500 roughly, something like that. I think that the exchange rate was back then, which you could save up for, and that was a tipping point of all this kit really becoming accessible. The JX3, the first synth I bought was my SH101 and JX3P, and they just so JX3P was the first Roland with MIDI. The only other synth out at that time was the sequential 6-track, which also had MIDI, which was like a 6-track multi-timbral thing, only 6 voice. And then suddenly there weren't any decent sequences. There was a terrible, I suppose it was good at the time, a terrible one called Yumi, which was based on the BBC computer that had come out, which used to crash all the time, but was good enough for kind of bands back then to be able to start using this stuff. And then I got a job at a synth shop where I lived. There was only, you know, in London, there was a synth shop called the London Rock Shop, which was like my mecca because it had all of this kit.
Oh,
So I
sounds
got a job
amazing.
with them, which allowed me to buy these things trades, but also just be
Mm.
surrounded by this stuff. And that's the tipping point. That's really what got me into. I was really lucky to have a classical music upbringing in school, so I could play a keyboard. It's really funny for me sometimes when you assume everyone can play a keyboard.
Right.
Natural to me, like you can drive a car, but of course you're not. You know, these things are tactile instruments, and obviously not anyone can play them. You know, more people can type than they can play keyboard. So I just had that. I was really lucky to have that ability to play, which actually put me, without realizing it, in my naive way, ahead of the curve of a lot of people of my age back then, and be able to buy this kit. So I immediately got into bands. And did the whole, back then was very much a live circuit, and I did that, and I was in a couple of good bands. We got a deal with Warner's back then, wasn't successful, but I got to work with a guy called Stephen Hague, who is he produced True Faith for New Order, a lot of Pet Shop Boys stuff. At the time he was just like, wow, I'm in a room with this guy, and I watched how he could work. And you just have to be a sponge. You've just got to absorb all this stuff in. So going back to what you asked, because I've just got on a huge.
It's okay. This is great. It's great information.
I worked out that in a room on my own, I just come up with the most dirgy, horrible, student-y, depressing music. And I think quite a lot of people do, actually, because you can be quite insular, inward looking. Sit down here and it's a Monday morning, or I am lucky enough to be able to work here all the time. But if you've worked all day and this is more of a hobby, a serious hobby, your kids are in bed, you can sit down, you've got a couple of hours. How on earth can you be inspirational like that? It all tends to be a little bit dirgy, if you like. So I'm also good at writing tunes, I'd like to say, but not particularly good at words. And words probably make it sound even more dirgy. So I've always put myself with other writers or people in the bands that I've worked with for inspiration. And if there's two people in the room, what I find is you automatically chuck out all the stuff that you're kidding yourself probably sounds okay, and you don't end up spending 2 hours on the kick drum sound trying to make it absolutely perfect. You put that kick drum sound in and just work it into a song, and then go back and tune the kick drum or whatever. But there's someone else there that you're almost vibing off. It's the same feeling that you get if you've ever had the label or the A&R man come in to the mix you're just finishing up, or your mum or your sister or your wife or your girlfriend listening after you finish something. You listen to it in a completely different way. You hear stuff. It's almost like you stepped aside and go, actually, do you know what? I've been concentrating on that bit, but that bit's wrong or right or whatever. And so I would say working with people, particularly now you can collab remotely as well, right? So you don't actually have to.
That's what I was going to ask you.
Really good. If you're writing a song, especially, with a guitar or a piano or whatever, two people, particularly with the artist, get in the room with them if you possibly can, at least at the beginning, and then chuck files backwards and forwards. There's for pure songwriting, rather than potentially kind of beat making, then there's nothing better. But yeah, work with people, and it's the same with everything. If you can build a label and a brand around yourself. If you're a musician now, there's a lot of people doing it, so it's hard to rise to the top, which is the same as my app, but it's possible because you can market to the world from your bedroom. Whereas before, you really did have to have a label to get your tune in the shops, and a plugger to get your tune on the radio. That really was necessary. Now, you need to get yourself on the right playlists, but put yourself with the people that can do that. If you're naturally not a front person and a bit, insular, then maybe find someone who is, that can front it. Or if you're good at lyrics, get your guy on the back end of stuff. I'm not sure. It's all about working with people. But as soon as you've got to impress someone or work with them or whatever, then I find it's a different mentality, and that makes you spur on and get something done. We're all guilty, I think, of leaving things to the last minute. Sometimes you just got to make the last minute tomorrow rather than 2 weeks time.
And I find that in a group environment, because I've tried to put together a couple groups, and it's difficult sometimes because of the personalities can be a problem sometimes. And although I do enjoy working by myself, I am at heart, I'm a lone wolf. I really am. But I really appreciate other people's creative abilities. So in my experiences, what I like to do is try to like grab a little piece of what somebody else is doing and integrate it into what I'm doing, because I really don't want anybody taking over whatever it is that I'm doing. But I do appreciate other people's, because somebody may have, there's somebody in the chat right now, Q, and he started telling me about how he likes to reverse samples a lot of times. If they don't sound right, he'll reverse them. And so when I built this Ableton template, I put in a reverse, I put a clip in there that can reverse samples on command. And since I did that, it's really opened my eyes to real-time effects and things that you can do, chopping up things on the fly and stuff like that. It's really helped. And then there's some other people in the chat here that I've also worked with. And you got techno people, and that's what I enjoy about the group scenario is you got techno people, you've got hip hop people, you've got boom bap or trap people, and you've got engineers, and you've got like real keyboardists and just people that know what they're doing that can kind of fill in the gaps. Because I did go to Berkeley for Ableton, so I'm quite good with Ableton. Mm-hmm. But I don't have any classical music training or anything like that. So I just make bleeps and bloops and just kind of do my whole kind of jump around and modulate and that kind of stuff. So, I think that it's important that when people hear how you've gone about things, to be inclusive and not to not to try and take the spotlight, but to share the wealth, because at the end of the day, everybody benefits when you put others first. I just feel
100%. I mean, I always wanted to be a pop star. That's what I wanted to be out of school, and I realized reasonably.
We did become that. I mean,
well, I've done the stuff on stage back then. I had decent management, but I knew pretty quickly that I wasn't going to. I might get a hit out of it, but I wasn't really going to get anywhere. There were people around who were just way much more pop star than me, and and it was a bit of a strange moment where I really still want to work in the music industry. I could carry on, I could delude myself. Again, know your own limitations, right? For a 17-year-old kid to decide he wasn't going to be a pop star might not be most 17-year-old kids' self-delusional thoughts, right? But so yeah, and I'd met enough people where I put myself in the right place. I was in London, I was with labels and managers and stuff, and just, and I think the ability to play got me there, ironically.
Right.
But you absolutely don't need to play to make, in fact, I think it's
probably
an advantage not to these days. Unless you want to go live to a keyboard session, which is what I was doing for a while, then clearly you need to be able to play. But I don't think in terms of production and writing particularly, you need to. It helps, but I have to forget a lot of the classical kind of training that I had. I had to relearn, basically, because just because someone puts some music in front of you and you play, if someone comes in with a guitar and says jam to this, I wouldn't know. Or write it down for me. And what chord is that? Or, and I was really lucky in that the band I joined, the singer, he was an amazing guy called Eric Robinson. He was a staff writer for Motown prior to coming over here. And he was just a prodigy keyboard player, and he had enough patience to let me work it out. But he literally used to come over and say, okay, play this. And I'd be like, how on earth am I going? Right, hang on, right. And I just do it. And he just dropped me in at the deep end. And suddenly I learned how. I just was very, very lucky to work with those kind of people, really. And I got it. And I absolutely got it. So
that's what's amazing about an MPC too, is I don't need to learn how to play a piano. I can just listen to you play it and chop it up and play it myself through
100%.
And that's 100%. Really how I've been able to do what I do, is just by sampling. And I don't normally sample record. I do sample records, but it's more for practice or just to know the craft. Because I try to stay away from the copyright problems. I normally just do my own thing. But as far as the art of sampling records and stuff like that, I've been taught by, I wouldn't say taught. I've been given some pointers by some guys that are really good at it. And so to try to implement that, it helps in all avenues. When you learn how to chop a sample, you learn where the
100%.
should be and where where things clip. And if you have the waveform coming up on one end of the sample and down on the other end, it's going to keep it from chopping, from clipping, and from sounding like
totally.
So
I mean, that's where I had a bit of an edge as well back then. So when I went back into the studio, I was sponsored by Akai, and I used to demo some of their kit. Now they had the S1000, the S900, the S950, the S1000 were the first hardware sampler of note, really. Again, quite expensive, but at that stage I could afford them. And ironically, from what you said, I was doing a lot of hip hop. I was working with DJs called the Boiler House Boys, you guys called Ben and Andy, and we did a lot of hip hop work, including kind of Kick It by a Tribe Called Quest. So that's our mix.
I saw that. That's amazing.
Yeah, and that was a whole new thing for me because I don't DJ. I do sometimes. I was going out to clubs and listening to what was working, but I wasn't the guy back then who put a record on and watched the floor empty and realized, okay, that one doesn't work, you know. And for basically three white guys in the studio who had a love of hip hop, they were getting a lot of decent remixes and a lot of decent work going on. And so the challenge there was I wasn't allowed to play anything. You know, the hip hop stuff was 100% sampled and built from scratch from other people's records. And it was amazing working with those artists and being accepted actually into that, you know, culture, if you like, and being successful at it and making one of the big ones, I guess, with Kick It, because it's obviously stood the test of time.
Oh yes.
With a big rack of samplers, you know, I had about seven samplers, because I was demoing them for Akai, making these tunes, and every single sound would be sampled and tweaked in 1,000. Now, S1000s and samplers back then, you could tell it a percentage of how much to change the stretch of the sample. They did not auto stretch. It's not like Ableton or GarageBand or Logic now, where you know it'll stretch and it'll it won't even keep the pitch straight, right? You could either tune it up or down and it would go up or down in pitch, or you could stretch it and it wouldn't. So I had all these little bits of software that I was writing to work out, you know, if you fundamentally put two records side by side and said, right, I want that one to be in tune and in time with that one, I'd work out how you could do that in one stretch, because every time you stretched it, it would basically, you know, knock the quality back.
Right.
So instead of stretching it to get it in time and then stretching it again to get it in the right pitch, we do it in one go. And you know, this is the kind of tools that we were working with. This is what employed me effectively, you know, to keep the stuff going. But I remember putting the Tribe mix down with all of these samples saved onto floppy disk as well. I mean, literally, they were floppy disks of floppy disks around that studio.
Those are worth money somewhere.
Yeah, they got stolen actually. Unfortunately,
are you serious?
Yeah.
Reader too.
Anyway, it's cool. There's some great loops, but that's what we were doing back then. That's why you could be kind of techie in the music industry, because the maths started getting involved. But that challenge of, I think it was brilliant. Not they basically being told you cannot play anything on this. This is an exercise effectively in sampling and adjusting and technology. Really, no, knock us out with whatever you can do. You know.
Well, let me change gears for a second here. Let's. I wanted to ask a couple non-musical questions, if you don't mind. So these are just kind of like just random stuff, just to kind of get an understanding of. We've talked about the music stuff, and we all see that you've got an extensive history in the music. But what about movies? What's your favorite movie?
Oh wow, gosh, I'm not massive on fabulous film stuff. I've done some work promoting films on a tech side where I've met some of the talent in some of the films and stuff, where we've been doing when they do their promo for a film, and generally all the actors and actresses are kind of shipped into a country and stuck in a big hotel that they rent out for a weekend, and then they push through all of the people filming. You know, you got 10 minutes with so-and-so over there, 10 minutes over there. They do the press junket, it's called, effectively. And I've done a couple of those just for bizarre techie reasons, which has been cool. But I think in terms of what movie would I watch again and again and again, I don't know, really.
What's the last movie you ever went to?
The first one, did you say?
The last
movie was Transformers.
Transformers? Which one? The original?
No, sorry, not Transformers. Captain not Invincibles. What's the scene? It was one for my kids.
Captain America. Was it?
Do you know, that shows you how good I am at films.
Hey, this is a question because I'm not a movie.
Incredibles.
Oh, The Incredibles. Okay.
Yeah, which is great. So my daughter's got me back into going to see movies. I binge watch American kind of thrillers or sci-fi or that kind of thing.
What about Netflix?
Yeah, binge watch a lot of that stuff. So I mean, all the usual suspects on Netflix. What I found recently is I just put YouTube on constantly in the background while I'm working, which I'm not sure if that's a particularly good idea, but there's a lot of good shows there. I started off because of the music stuff that was on there. Obviously, I've tried to make a few, mainly on the Deluge. When the Deluge came out, I just thought this would be a really good one to try and make a video about, because no one's really making that many videos. And so if I was going to try and get something going, that would be a good one to pick. And then that led on to being on Sonic State. Big up Sonic State, and that, which is just a fabulous thing.
Anybody that doesn't know, Dominic is a regular guest on Sonic State, does a great job representing the synth side of things. For sure.
Thank you. But yeah, do you know what I mean? There's pictures. This is a cinema behind me, so there's a screen that drops down. So there is you know, Godfather and Rocky there, and Scarface. Classics. I mean, they are my fab films, I suppose. But basically, a screen drops down there, and there's a projector above me. So
man, that's what I want to do down here. That's what I'm trying to do down here, is put a projector down here. So
it's just above my head. I mean, this was, when we bought this house, this was the AV cinema room, if you like. But because it's at the top of the house, it's completely soundproof, so it was absolutely perfect to put this in one end. And there's a big sofa just behind there, so people can still use it as a cinema. And if I'm trying to do sound to film, it works really well. And then I've got an office. The other side of that door, there's a door in the corner which takes me to my office. So I'm completely nicely locked away from any disturbance.
You don't have to leave it. You don't ever have to leave.
Well, apart from the fridge,
the thing we talked about.
I think. Yeah.
So you talked about, you still have your JP3?
Yeah, JX3P.
JX3P.
I've actually got the original one. I'd never sell it. It was the first one I bought.
Man, I'd love to have one. I really would love to have one.
Well, I'll tell you, mine now has the Kiwi mods. If you come across Kiwitronics, worth a check. So there's a guy called Murray at Kiwitronics. He reverse engineered, what was it he did first? Matrix 1000? Might have been a JX3P. Anyway, he reverse engineered the firmware in the JX3P.
Really?
And rewrote it to fix a few little bits and add some extra stuff. Phenomenal. You have to take it apart, fit a new board, put it back together again, but it gives it things like touch sensitivity. You can map stuff to the filter. It's absolutely phenomenal. He has one for the JX3P. He has one for the Juno, which is, my Juno, funnily enough, is just broken because if you've got a Juno 106, the voice cards go after a while, and you have to soak them in acetone and chip off this horrible coating that they've got. So that's in the process of doing that. But he's made a retrofit for that, which is awesome. He's got a Matrix 1000 one. And so, yes, I actually have two. I bought a second JX3P because it didn't work off of eBay and fixed it, which is really useful. I'm not amazing at fixing stuff, but that was a lucky break. So I have two of those. And with the Kiwi mod, it's outstanding. And I still have my SH101, which has one of the very, very first MIDI retrofits on it, made by Kenton, who are still going. But this board, if you look in the back of my SH101, it's a massive, great thing, which is a MIDI retrofit on it.
The GX3P was like for anybody that doesn't know, it was one of the first synths that had an external MIDI controller that was supplied for it. I'm trying to pull up a picture here. So
it's called a PG200. Actually, it wasn't even MIDI, that one. It sort of plugged in and 5-pinned in.
With their own kind of MIDI implementation.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And it would receive MIDI. It was one of the very, very first. But this, they used their own kind of communication settings. But yeah, it's one of those which is very flat with buttons on the front. And it was, to be fair, it's not that hard to program, but it's not twisty. So they made this PG200, which I don't have. It it was extra, so I couldn't afford that. And now they're reasonably expensive, but
Yeah, they're getting up there now.
I have this thing which is Kiwitronics as well, which is this.
Oh, okay.
So when I got the Kiwitronics upgrade for the JX3P, this is Kiwitronics' own editor for it.
Okay.
And the good thing about this is you can cycle through different keyboards. And I'm a Roland fanboy from back then, so I've got like JX3P, MKS70, MKS80, Juno, and they can all be edited from here. So I literally cycle through and say, okay, I switch it to Juno, and then the filter will adjust to Juno. So great. I can actually sit here remotely and tweak everything and record the tweaks as they come. So that was a good buy. So I've never needed the PG200 for the JX3P because I can use one of these,
right,
to make it work. And
so what, like, have you ever gotten your hands on like a CS80? Or
I've played one. I used to know a mate had one who was a session player, and he would just used to kind of just like be, I can't believe I have to get work. You can't carry that thing around. The transportation was ridiculous on them, and they are amazing. I haven't played one for a long time. I saw Nick at Sonic State had me onto there was a video of the guy behind Omnisphere playing his CS80. And I'll send it to you. You can add it afterwards to the show notes. But that was quite incredible. The polyphonic aftertouch and the sound coming out of that thing is just brilliant. And I've forgotten because it's on the radar now, but everyone is still up for the Jupiter 8. Everything, which I think is quite overrated, to be fair. The CS80 was always not mentioned so much, and seeing that is just brilliant.
And with the Omnisphere, Black Corporation
come out of that are astonishing. That guy's
really?
Amazing. Yeah. You could make virtually anything with just a copy of Omnisphere. And I know it's not cheap, but he's Eric Persing, his name is, and he was one of the sound designers on the very early Roland stuff. So you'll find his presets all over the place. But yeah, just his sound design skills are incredible. So I think it takes the right person to play it as well.
Yeah, definitely. You gotta know what you're doing with the keys for sure.
Yeah. They're just so huge. No, there's a brilliant. It's about half an hour long. There's a brilliant kind of jam that he does with another guy. You can link to it. I'll send you the link. That just shows how beautiful this kind of thing sounds. Just amazing.
I actually have a. Let me see. I actually think I have a. Let me see here. I have a link pulled up for the
motor synth.
Yep, there's the motor synth, but then there's this guy right here. Let's see. Is that in the stream? Or is that not?
We're on motor synth, I think, at the moment.
I'm on motor synth. Okay.
That's a cool thing. While you're looking through it.
One of the ones that I wanted to show you in a little bit here. You've seen the motor synth, I take it then.
Not in the flesh, but I spoke to Gaz, who was over there at the show. Aha. Just amazing.
This guy. The stuff that it can do is just it doesn't make any sense. They were doing this in like 1979.
Yeah.
And there's no effects.
It's just huge, isn't it? They're just lovely.
It's got to be the biggest sounding synth that's been put out in history. I mean, I could just listen to that kind of stuff all day long.
I think a lot of it as well. I mean, obviously the circuits they put together are incredible, but it all drifts internally. The tolerance on the capacitors and the resistors are all 5-10%, and so everything just moves and squelches. I think the Jupiter 4 is, given the choice, I'd love a Jupiter 4 rather than a Jupiter 8 as well. I think that has the same weight. If they were all three, I mean, I'd love any of those, to be honest.
Right. Yeah.
I remember when the Jupiter 6 came out. I used one for a bit, sounding thick and bassy, but quite brittle, and it's that digitally kind of sound. Just thinking at the time, and you can use it, but I remember it jumping out of the mix a bit more.
Yeah.
And Jupiter 8 is obviously lovely and still very heavy, but the Jupiter 4 it needs more love. I think it's a bit of a secret weapon. I see it getting mentioned more and more these days, but that I think that's the real ace in Roland's hand. If you're after that old warmth and you can't afford the CS80, then try and pick up a 4. It's a really.
I mean, I've never even heard of a Jupiter 4, to be honest.
Oh, okay. Yeah. It came out first, I think. Then the Jupiter 8, then the Jupiter 6 was the digital. Yeah, check it. It's
okay. Let me look at
how many they sold, but it's definitely it's the poor cousin, but it shouldn't be. It really shouldn't.
Jupiter 4. This might be something. So how many? Is it an 8 voice?
Is it 4 voice? I can't remember. I actually can't remember. It's been so long.
Yeah, I guess it probably Jupiter. Maybe it is.
What did I buy? I bought one of my JX3Ps, actually, the one that I fixed. The guy that I bought it from had one, and we were just playing around with it in his room, and it was just amazing, just amazing. I've forgotten the specs and stuff, but it just felt, I don't know, it just felt bigger and thicker and badder and stronger, I think. It's got push buttons, which is what reminded me on the CS80. It's very similar looking to these plastic push buttons. The weird thing, though, I mentioned this once before, was that the Roland were all about recreating the sound of real instruments, mimicking real instruments. So the JX3P has got buttons with presets called string 1, string 2, string 3, piano, all this kind of stuff.
Okay.
Their whole bag was, we want to make a synthetic version of real things, and so all the rest almost happened by accident. And it's really only up until the re-release of the stuff like the boutiques that they've accepted that, there's this massive market for synths that, don't. So all the original stuff that then turned into like the JV 1080s and 2080s and stuff, they're all, perfect representations of trying to make instruments. And it was a side effect that, that they got so heavily used and created, really, the 303 and the 101s and stuff created their own form of music off the back of it. That was completely by accident, and I don't even think it was actually very much acknowledged by the guys behind the company. It was just a natural little offshoot. The dramatics, the 606 drum machine and the 303 bass line, they were literally designed for people as little almost practice sessions, so you could have a drum track in the bass line and then you could play along the guitar. And they were really annoyed because it didn't really sound much like a bass guitar. And to be fair, when they came into our shop, we used to draw lots as to kind of like who were going to demo it, because none of us could understand how that thing worked. It would just have a life of its own now. It seems more simplistic now, but yeah, they would just be like, what is this bleepy bloop bass thing? And it goes whoop, and you can do slides and rests, and it's a step sequencer, and then you can change the steps to chain the steps together and stuff. We would literally go, oh no, you demo it. Oh, someone's come in, asked to have a go on the 303 again. You couldn't give them away until obviously people realized what they sounded like, and for other purposes, and it just exploded. And
now they've been reinvented again, with the new series. The Roland stuff is a lot of people are pretty high on it. I got to see it in action myself, but people are saying that they may, I don't know if you're into like any of the innovation stuff, but like the circuits are pretty underappreciated too.
I agree. I've not played on them, but yes, again, I think Nick Sonic State was one of his favorite things. He was he
didn't really he was high on
his judgment on anything. I've just got too much stuff. I cannot justify.
It's hard. It's hard.
Else, because it's the two new openings for me where, well, let's buy some jam boxes, and go doorless and all the rest of it, and that's great, done that, and then get a little bit involved in modular, and that's just a gaping wide hole.
A whole other worms there.
Yeah, exactly. So I have zero budget or inclination to buy anything else at the moment.
Right.
The modular stuff is cool though. I use it as a effects rack more than anything.
Okay.
So anyway, this bit, these are Moog Mother 32s, which is slightly different. But this bit here is filters, delays, a couple of sound generators, but not really an instrument in its own right. So I love chucking long samples and stuff out of the computer through it, and then sort of you can. It has a thing called an Expert Sleepers ES8, which is like an audio interface and a synchronization interface. So with Logic or Ableton, you can send something out to it and send a clock, and you can change it, and then feed it back in.
You're very much into the same kind of techniques that I'm into, which is sending audio to different places.
Yeah.
A lot of times I'll put I'll have a session going on push, an Ableton session, and then with my mixer in the back there, it has 10 mix outs, it has 8 group outs, it has all this different stuff, so that I can route one out into my MPCX. I can route one out into the Deluge. Have you feeded yours into the 3.0 yet?
No, I have 3.0. Sorry, I have 3.0 running on it, but I haven't used it in anger.
It's freaking.
I've done the quick. Yeah, that's why I've done no videos. I've done the quick check over it, and I'm busy working on an app for them actually.
I know that. I was hoping we could divulge
in the manual on that one, which is not. It's not a controller app. It's not like a screen for the Deluge.
Okay.
It's just not possible at the moment. I'm not sure if it ever will be.
Will it be a programming app?
Pardon?
Will it be a programming app for the Deluge?
At the moment, no, because it doesn't really allow you very easily to program it remotely. But
what will the app do?
Sorry, say again.
The Deluge app?
Yeah, the Deluge app is like a quick start, quick reference guide to the thing, rather than a controller app. So I've been so busy with that I haven't been able to play, with my full heart. There's been no new Wiggly videos, no new jams coming out of the Deluge, because I've just bitten off a little bit more than I can chew. But anyway, that's progressing, which is good. It would be awesome if Rowan at Deluge added some control commands that allowed, even via just MIDI rather than USB, allowed control over some of those parameters, because it would be very possible to control it remotely now. And he's been so busy. That guy's a genius. People who don't follow the Deluge, it is an amazing box of tricks. It really is good, but it's designed by one guy effectively, and he's in partnership with his sort of business guy as well, Ian and Rowan. And it's phenomenal. It's absolutely phenomenal, what it does and how it works, and the fact that they keep throwing out these most amazing updates to a box that is really already a few years old, which is just fantastic. So the latest upgrade is this looper, so it turns the whole thing into almost like a looping pedal.
Yes.
And now that's out, and I think most of the bugs are clear and all the rest of it. I might have a little word and say, look, come on, let's get a few little controls.
Man,
because an iPad, and that, it would just be brilliant. You go, I'll just turn the filter up and down.
Man, it would be amazing. And I don't have a problem with it not having a screen. That's not a big deal.
No, exactly. I agree with you. I think people who haven't used it clearly do, and I would be one of them. If you just don't, it doesn't make sense. There are two downsides that people always point out. One is the lack of multiple outputs. One is the size of the screen.
Yep.
Screen is completely irrelevant, because actually those buttons turn into.
They are a screen, as far as I'm concerned.
To be fair, I've got an Octatrack which is going up for sale shortly, but that screen is bigger. I've given up trying to read it, to be honest.
Right.
It's as confusing as the one in the Deluge would be if it was that size.
Yeah.
And the outputs is a valid comment. If you're going to do some stuff, trying to do something completely live, and really you want to push the kick drum out of something else, but it does have sidechain built in. It does have everything else, and they sound.
Do you know if it's possible with the Deluge to have the USB as an audio?
No, yes, I do know. It's not. I think it would have to be a firmware upgrade. I don't know for certain, but that's what's come back to me in the past.
Okay.
So it fits in. It's a minor thing, because obviously if you're for most people, if you can run it multiple times if you want to get super independent outputs, and you're really chucking. I don't tend to sample on it. You're just chucking sounds backwards and forwards via USB. But I guess if you're taking it out live and you wanted to at least take out the kick drum, maybe you'd want to trigger something else out over MIDI for the kick drum. But I've heard some great sets of people literally with just those things.
Yes, people walking around the club.
Yeah, that's Ian. That's the business guy. He's just brilliant.
Just walking around, and you can hear people saying, "What the f is that?"
Yeah, exactly. So I met him when he came over to do a Deluge sort of demo must have been about 4 or 5 months ago now in London, and I met him for the first time. And yeah, he goes out and he's a club promoter and a manager originally as well. He's very, very, very sorted kind of guy, and he just gets on and does stuff. A very no messing kind of attitude, which is great. And yeah, he came over, he did a couple of Deluge shows, he went and did a few trade things and saw people. Then he went out to a club every couple of nights and just plugged it in with a jack and just started, you know, it didn't even have a strap, you know, just holding it on, banging around, which is brilliant. And he doesn't even have like a right angled jack that you might get on a guitar that'll stop people kind of banging it. And I was like, why don't you just, no, I like it. I quite like it when people knock it out, because it shows it's like real, and I can just, you know, stick it back in again and off we go. Very punk attitude. It's great. Yeah, really, really good. They're a fabulous team. Long may that continue. I hope I hope they obviously get bigger and bigger and bigger, but not so big as that they lose that connection that they've got now, because it's a really unique little spirit in that.
If anybody, like, I know that they are expensive. I mean, it's not like a little cheap toy. They are expensive, but I would highly advise anyone that's trying to get into music production, at least take a look at the Deluge, because it does everything. It may not do everything like everything does. It may not do sampling like the MPC does, but it does sampling. It does chopping.
Yeah.
Most things. It doesn't have multiple outputs like we've talked about, but to learn music production, I mean, it keeps you in time. Like it's got the loop, you know, the clip. I mean, it's just unbelievable.
It's one of the only, if you had to pick one thing, go make an album with one thing, there isn't a lot of stuff around. The Deluge would win it by far. I mean, there are obviously things like the OP1 and stuff people use, but under the surface, that Deluge really does everything. If it's probably about as cheap as they can make it, because they don't sell through, they're selling direct, so there's already no markup, you know. So the cost to manufacture compared to what it is, there's probably not massive amounts of difference. But I mean, I hesitate to say if you want your kid to learn how to do electronic music, that's it, because it's way too expensive.
Very expensive.
But that's the kind of thing for anyone who's kind of thinking like, I don't know anything about this. What can I get that'll give me that, exactly as you say, give me that overview on everything? It's just perfect. And I've taken it on holiday a few times. You know, it runs on batteries, for goodness sake. You don't even, and it has a speaker as well. You don't even need to plug headphones in half the time. It's
I was using it on a beach in Cambodia. Literally, it was amazing, you know. And I couldn't believe that I was able to do this stuff on an airplane and do all. And I actually made a couple nice tracks, you know. And that's so. Is the Deluge or Deluge? I guess if you're from the UK, is that what you're saving if your house is on fire? What are you saving?
Electronic kit wise, music kit wise, obviously.
Out of your whole studio, what are you saving?
If I had to, yeah.
You only got time to grab one thing.
It would have to be my SH-101 and Jack 3P, because that's what I bought when I was like 14.
Well, technically that's two things.
Probably 17 to be fair, but just for historical reasons, because you know all this stuff is replaceable,
right?
But some of the older stuff isn't. I think that's the point, isn't it? Yeah, I was sorry to lose some of the samples I had from back in the day. There was a house move, and I don't know if they got nicked or whatever, but yeah, I miss those, because there were some really cracking old samples from back then. But so no, anything that isn't replaceable, I think, would be. How about you? What's your go-to piece?
I'm definitely grabbing the Deluge. I've got some nice equipment. You know, I've got some more modern equipment. I've got a Rev 2. I've got a Prophet 6. Oh. And I've got some nice stuff, but I'm grabbing the Deluge. I don't have the history with the music stuff. I mean, if anything is sentimental to me, it was my Sub Fatty, my Moog Sub Fatty. But my wife bought it for me. It was the first synth I ever owned, and she surprised me with it for Christmas one year. You know, she just bought it for me. She got it online. It was brand new. I had a blindfold, the whole thing, and she had me open it, and she even took a video. And I cried. I did. I couldn't believe it. And come to find out, I didn't know the difference at that time between monophonic and polyphonic.
Yeah.
So I thought I wanted a Moog, and I actually wanted something polyphonic.
Right.
So I love that thing. I had to, because that's the thing, is like, if you don't have room or you need something else, you can sell your other equipment.
Yes.
You're not handcuffed to it.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, that's probably what I would say. If I still had my Sub Fatty, I'd save that. Since I don't, I'm saving the deluge. I actually got a question in the chat. Somebody had asked, what is your favorite? This is Inky. What is your favorite dance track that you were not a part of?
Oh, hi, Inky. Oh man, I would probably go back rather than some of the later stuff. So when I was working at putting this stuff out, and we were looking at like midweek chart positions or DJ returns and all the rest of it, and seeing who was doing better than what we were doing, and you're back to things like S Express and Bomb the Bass, and so you're talking about 90s dance stuff that came out of the UK. So yeah, Bomb the Bass. I'd say those, and S Express. If you haven't come across S Express, it's S apostrophe Express. It's a mate of mine. They had a couple of brilliant hits, a real breath of fresh air into quite a reasonably boring chart. One of them was a #1 actually. Back in the day when you could do lots and lots of sampling. In fact, that just reminded me, if you got time, I was going to talk a tiny bit about the sampling. But yeah, that kind of stuff, where they've come out from and it just invented a new culture, you know. So it's just come from left of center, and you've just gone, what the hell have you just done?
Oh my God.
Another one we called Mars, MARRS, which is going to pump up the volume, which is quite big as well.
Oh yeah, we did that one.
Yeah, yes. All those genre. I mean, I love dance. I love all sorts of music. Actually, I really love pop music. You know, I really don't care about, you know, if you think it's people selling out or whatever. One of the weird things that kind of winds me up sometimes is people saying, "Oh, well, yeah, you know, if we just made really commercial music, then you know we'd all be making millions. You know, so and so is just a rubbish singer or whatever." And you know, the commercial. It's really hard to make commercial music. It really is. You can't just sit down and say, today we're just going to make a commercial pop song, because you won't be able to. I tell you, I spent years trying to do it. And luckily, kind of got there eventually, just about the time I was going to be giving up, right? So unless you're making something you truly believe in, then it probably won't sound that good.
It's almost like with commercial music, it has to sound the same as everything else, but it has to be completely different too. Or
yeah, there's a production and a flavor involved that can be derivative to a degree, I suppose. But classic pop music, you know, classic pop songs and stuff like that is great. It's just as valid to me as anything else, you know. So I think it's anything that comes out that's different, that grabs. Right. And it comes around every now and then, you know, suddenly something, where the hell did that come from?
Yep.
That's what does it. So that was at a time when I was actively trying to make records like that. And some of those guys just came in and were just killing it. It was just brilliant, and changing the face of music at the same time, which is really cool.
It looks like there's a couple more questions here too. One question was, what do you see as an upcoming strong trend in the music?
Oof, I wish I knew.
Yeah.
Wish I knew. I mean, I will get trends way after. I mean, it's funny for me seeing the trends of stuff I was involved with come, like Future Beat or whatever, just coming back around again.
Right. Absolutely. Synthwave.
Yeah, exactly. You know, so that whole thing of the 80s stuff, which is great. I mean, and I love it. And it's interesting for me to see the bits of the 80s stuff that people have grabbed onto, and the bits that have been left behind a lot of the time. I really don't know. I think it's just such a brilliant kind of massive creativity going on all over.
There's so many factors.
Facebook, YouTube, and whatever. And you do get this sort of spurt of stuff that comes out every now and then, but I really haven't got a clue. I think vocals will come back a lot. I think, you know, there's a lot of people that are making stuff without vocals because that's, you know, locked away and whatever. And I mean, in dance music as well, not necessarily just for commercial stuff. I think we're owed that. But other than that, I'm not sure. I mean, there's a lot of 4 on the floor dance oriented stuff, which is obviously getting a little bit cliched. So I mean, I've been talking about quite a lot of the YouTube demos that you can see, and people like, okay, well, what I'm going to do is this is how I work in Ableton, and there's, that's great, and it works. It really does work in a club, but it's reached a tipping point where It's not the 4 and the 4-bit, but it's just there is this sort of layout of track that you can apply, this template.
I kind of have, I mean, obviously I'm not, you know, cultured in the music like you are, but I kind of have a feeling, just by the way things are going, that because live is such a huge thing right now, everybody's, you know, the trends are live, really, to me. Like, feels like the people that are going to be able to do things on the spot in a live environment are, we may be seeing you know, hits being played out in a live situation. I don't know even know if it's possible at this point in time, but you could preset modulations in Ableton. Like, you could draw in modulations and do all kinds of stuff and then play the track. Like,
I mean, ultimately that's kind of how you make a tune anyway now, how you master the tune. You're right. I mean, and that's for a couple of reasons. I think the whole kind of X factor, which I'm not a fan of at all, but that whole thing at least got people to see that, about how people can perform, how artists can sing. And there's a difference between
thing.
Like, so there's nothing, everything else about that show I'm really not a fan of. But it did show that people standing up on the stage with a microphone that can sing have a singing talent, if you like. And that's not necessary. You don't have to be able to sing at all. There are some great artists with very unique voices, but it's one aspect. And the other thing is that obviously the revenue's fallen out of the music market on everything but live shows and live performance. So, I mean, I'm lucky enough to get revenue from stuff that I've written in the past, and I've seen that dwindle towards the streaming side. So that, if you look at my revenue report that says here's a circle of all the money, around about 85% of that now comes from streaming, and streaming is very, very little compared to what, say, radio play would have played before. You know, now I'm not complaining, because I think back in the day we had it far too good. You know, we would get 40 quid for a radio play on Radio 1 in the UK. That's crazy amount of money to play one record, and brilliant, nice work if you can get it, but clearly not sustainable. So we've come down to a payment level which is more in keeping with where it probably should be, and it's fallen way off the other side now. But the only way to make money really is from live broadcasts or alternative things. Like, for example, the Snuggle Sounds app is a way of taking relaxing, chill out music and clever stuff that I've been doing and packaging it in such a way that I can probably make enough money back from it to warrant making it, because you're buying an app as a package rather than streaming, the 50, 60 tracks that are on it on Spotify, so that niche marketing way is one way of supporting yourself, I guess. But you're right, people are prepared to buy tickets to go and see some really good entertainment, and rightly so, but they don't need to pay money now to consume the music that they want to consume. And it's devalued music, but to be honest, I'm in a minority of one here. I do think music was very, very overpaid for a very, very long time, and we are on the flip side of that now.
Paying for it now a little bit. Yeah.
Could do with a bit more now, definitely.
Right.
But it's the industry that's kind of set it up that way. Unfortunately, most management companies view Spotify as a promotional tool, not a revenue stream, which is really strange considering 85%.
That's kind of counterintuitive, right there.
Yeah, that's the way they view it, and so their artists their revenue stream will not come from that. They'll come from the touring or the endorsements or the performance side of things.
Well, I had scheduled you in for an hour. I don't know if you're busy. I had a couple other.
Carry on. It's all good.
Okay. So I know about some of the entrepreneurial, if that's even a word, ventures that you've been involved with. One that was like super really interesting for me was your nuke bunker.
Yes.
Can we talk anything about that? Or
that's a weird one. I've always, like I say at the beginning, I've never really had a job. I teamed up with two partners who were brothers of each other, not of me. And I was doing the music side of things. This is kind of early internet days, and where multimedia and music and video online. We're in its very early stages, and these two guys were much more computer oriented. One's very big in Google now. You know, the guy's very big in kind of hardware and hacking circles, and me, who was kind of music. And we formed a company to look at digital audio, really, and do stuff with digital audio in its very, very early days. And caught that wave again. It's that tipping point. So caught that wave. So we built, one of the first jobs we had was to build the radio playout center for Sky, which is Sky satellite TV channel over here, so TV corporation, massive, right? And they had like an 80 channel radio station originally where you could pick from a pop channel and a rock channel and all this. And we built this automated system that would do that. So my knowledge of music and digital audio and how it could work, coupled with their knowledge of hardware and the software designed to play this stuff out, we just got the gig to do this thing, which was incredible. And then we started getting work as anti-hackers. So people were just beginning to put websites on online, and some of the big corporations had seen, because we'd worked for Sky, we were kind of cleared to work with big companies, would employ us, particularly the other two, to stop people hacking their website and defacing the front pages and stuff. And one day we went to a certain large corporation to help them out, and the aircon had failed in their server room, and the back door was open to their server room, which happened to open out onto a canal towpath. So they were paying us all this money to electronically protect all their assets, but they'd actually just left the door open, so you could just walk in and walk off with all their servers if you want. And we suddenly thought, wow, this is incredible. Physical security is still just as important as electronic, as online security. I wonder what we can do about that. And then there was an article in one of the big daily papers over here where the MOD, Ministry of Defence, was selling a nuclear bunker because they didn't want it anymore, but it was fully working. Oh yeah, well, we should buy that. That's a great idea. And we got it. We actually got this nuclear bunker. It was a sealed bid. We put a bid in and we got a call and they said, yeah, thank you very much. It's yours. You know,
talk about shooting for the stars, though. Like your bunk. I said, talk about shooting for the stars. Like,
yeah. Well, I mean, we'd have loved to have got it. This thing was is massive. It's like a 2-floor office building underground. We're not talking like a little round table with chairs around it.
500, like 50,000 square feet or something.
Yeah, roughly. There was about 1,200 staff in there, and it was basically designed to spot incoming nuclear missiles. So in there were large rooms with big round, almost like oscilloscopes, you know, those tracking traces, with people sitting in them, monitoring aircraft and trying to spot something that wasn't meant to be there. And it was absolutely fascinating. I mean, this thing would have cost billions to build. And it was in full working order. There's never been a bunker sold in working order like that. And it was costing them several £1 million a year to maintain, because there's aircon, pressured aircon. And I mean, it's exactly as you would imagine. I was amazed. It's got these huge doors at each end, blast doors with big things. And, you know, but for our purposes, internet servers are exactly the same as radar things. So it's designed to protect electronics, really, not so much the people. So effectively, they took out all the important stuff, left all the plant there. We took on some of the people that worked for them because it didn't really come with a manual. And we started putting internet servers on. And we had a few clients that we already had that we were working with because of the hacking side, a couple of banks, and they went in. And very slowly, very, very slowly, it came together. And in fact, it was sold. I mean, we ended up putting a team of other people in charge, proper businessmen. I didn't see myself particularly as a proper businessman, particularly back then, because we're talking about, 15, 20 years ago. But it was sold to a venture capital firm about this time last year, I think. And it's got a proper, it's absolutely chocker full with all sorts of crazy stuff. And when we did it, since then, there's a few others around the world. They make really, really good, secure environments to house your servers in. What was interesting for me, because I ended up really going out and selling the thing, really, is that no one tended to be that excited about it until they'd had a problem. Right. And when they had a problem, suddenly their whole the bosses of the company were like, we can't, you know, the impact on our business has been incredible. No, you see it now all the time. You see another data breach, but you know, theft and all the rest of it. And it's not just, it wasn't really there to stop your server from working in the event of a nuclear attack, because everything else would have probably gone wrong at that time. But it was the whole security culture of, we don't let anyone in to your server. It is impossible to get inside this place. You know, there are guards and big fences and dogs, and you know, this is the safest place to house something in the UK, and all the protocols around that. You know, you're safe. And as soon as people started to have problems, then it started filling up.
Right.
And now, like I say, there was some stuff. There's some stuff running down there. I don't even know what it is. We're not allowed to know. It's all ring fenced down there. But I stepped aside from there about 4 years ago, and I was very much in the background. But
I mean, this goes back to what you were saying before about knowing what you don't know. Like, you took on this project, this massive project. You didn't wait for something to happen first. You know, like these people that are, you know, they realize there's a problem, and then they go scattering around for a solution to it. You knew what you didn't know, which was like, I don't know how secure we are, so let's go and make this secure. You know, and that's a perfect, you know, a perfect example of how you've been able to be successful. You just, you know, you put your head down and you go to work, and you work with good people, and it's a really good model to follow. Really, you know, just stay humble and just help people where you can, you know, and just do the right thing. So
thank you. No, I mean, thank you. There's an awful lot of luck involved, but you've also got to put yourself in the right place. And I have been extraordinarily lucky, because I have had what I would see as a reasonably successful career in music, and also in the business side. They're all linked back in some way generally to music, or what I've learned through the IT side of music. And it's nice to be back here now, back on the 100% on the music front of it. But yeah, I've been extraordinarily lucky, and I think fundamentally I'm quite good at explaining complicated things to people who don't understand them in a way that you can, you know, from a tech perspective, that can be quite a good skill, and from a music perspective as well, that's quite a good skill to have. Right. So being able to gain people's trust that you actually do know what you're talking about, which means you do have to know what you're talking about. This is not the toothbrush salesman, you know, when it's, right. Don't like that, I'll sell you this one kind of thing. As long as you believe in what you're doing, then you know, generally it will happen. If you don't believe in it,
showing with action rather than words is a big thing too, you know. Yeah, so
exactly.
So the other thing, let's see, there was a couple other things here. You know, it says that my connection was a little choppy.
Yeah, you're choppy to me here as well, actually. I wasn't sure.
I wonder if it's been that way the whole time. Let's hope not.
No. In the last sort of five minutes or so, you've started glitching. But if I'm coming across okay, then
I will. I'll take that as a sign. Was there any other? You said there might be something that you wanted to.
Oh, I was just going to say, back in the day, talking about clearing samples for hip hop and stuff. Mm-hmm. And I'm not even sure whether you can do that. You can even do it properly now. But something like Tribe Called Quest is 100% made of samples, the Can I Kick It track, and I would have to fill in a great big sheet. Maybe it's the same now. I haven't had to clear samples for a while, but the track, how many bars, how many beats, what length of time every single sample was used, and of course there are about 15 different mixes and versions and edits. And to go through that whole process, and there was literally chunks and chunks of paper. And I think that's what has limited to a certain degree what can be done with sampling these days. You can still clear it or re-record it and so forth. But the example of the tracks that I liked way back, which were very, very sample heavy, even if fabulous stuff like Jay Dilla or whatever, who's just, you know, just weaving together samples and stuff so brilliantly. It just couldn't be done now legally. and you can put
Right.
it on SoundCloud and get it taken down. But there is a massive amount of creativity that involved in building stuff from those building blocks, if you like, as well as paying them when it's done.
Anybody that sampling is just stealing other people's music. I mean, there may be those cases where that happens, but the people that sample that I know, it's an art form. I mean, they're taking things and making beautiful music with something that somebody else, and some people see it as a compliment when you've taken their track and you've done it in your own way and whatnot. But of course, it all comes down to money at the end of the day, doesn't it? So
yeah, and I mean, credit where credit's due. If you're taking source sounds and you're turning them into something new, great. If you're taking someone's beat and just rapping over the top or singing over the top, then clearly then you have to, you and you're making money from it, and you should share that money, I guess. I mean, what made me smile, I wasn't even smile really. I mean, the Sting was given writing credits for every single Police track.
right.
So every single song those guys did, the credit is 100% with Sting. Now that's cool. That's what was agreed at the time or whatever. That's fine. But it does mean that things like Every Breath You Take, which is sampled by P. Diddy, has no Sting vocal on it, just that kind of iconic guitar line that the guitarist played. All the royalties from that goes to Sting. So, so there's both sides to that argument, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I guess, it depends on how smart you are in the beginning. If I've seen people lose millions of dollars recently on copyright claims, and there's that fine line between interpolation and sampling too, because you're supposed to be able to interpolate, but now we can't. Now there's like a thing with that too. So who knows what it's an odd kind of place we're in. It's like a transitional thing. I mean, maybe there'll be a development here where people can still get paid and still use sampling as an art form. And
I mean, I thought we had that thing you're just mentioning. Is that Katy Perry, or who won? Who lost?
Yeah, it was Katy Perry's. She had to pay. She had to pay. I can't remember his name, but he's a rapper. And I guess she just used a small piece, or actually,
see that changes everything, and I hope that'll get overturned because that was an instrumental line. I checked into it afterwards. It's like a riff that he used in the chorus, and so it's
identical.
Yeah, it makes no sense. I mean, basically, I know that up until that point, a song is the words and the tune. So if I sing you a song now, that's my song. If you record acoustic guitar or do a different version of it, it's still my song. It's not your song, which is quite interesting where Sting comes from, because that's fair enough. It's an arrangement. If I come in and it's my song, that's great. If you change the words and if you come up with a new bit of it, then we co-wrote it. But again, if you sung me something and I came in and started working on it, it doesn't matter, unless you felt that you personally felt that I'd contributed something to that was worthy of a writing credit. It really is your song. So if I came up with a great riff in the chorus, it'd still be your song, unless you decided to give me some. There are a few examples where that's not true. Like, for example, I would take some Rolling Stones songs where Keith Richards played some iconic guitar riffs that really make the song. They are as much words and tune. That's probably the best example of something like that. There's several of those songs where you just need that or whatever is part of that song. Great. So, and they share the royalties on that anyway. But for someone to come along after the event and say, I had a song with a similar kind of sounding riff, the sound and the tune was the same in the chorus, therefore it's my song, is completely wrong. It's an arrangement. And that's true. And what I've just seen, what I was going to lead on to say is, I have noticed with a mate who will remain nameless, has been given a writing credit on a major of Katy Perry level artist for a song they made back in the late 80s. The song there's definitely a similarity. So what's happened is the artists have done the song. They've come to them and said, we've made this tune. We kind of had you in mind. We had you, it's kind of like your chorus. So we're going to give you a writing credit. Whoopee, you know, payday, brilliant, absolutely fantastic. So everyone's happy all around, right? But I've always looked at it and I've thought, it's not that similar. Great, really nice gesture, but it's not that similar. What's occurred to me recently, and I kind of hope this isn't the case, is that if you were worried about anyone popping up out of the woodwork with something you'd never heard before but sounds similar to your tune, like what has just happened, who clearly don't have a right to your music,
right.
I'm absolutely convinced they didn't, wouldn't it be much better to have given away 5% of your tune to something that was made a long time ago? Absolutely. And protect yourself than actually carry on? Because when I come along and say, you know what, I wrote that chorus, have a listen. She says, no, you go and sue those guys over there. They wrote it in 1980, whatever. And it suddenly clicked in my cynical mind that I think that might be a damage limitation exercise.
Like if you're feeling inspired by somebody or somebody's music, what you're saying is maybe you should reach out to them first before you use. Is that kind of...
Yeah, but I think in this, I mean, we are talking a massive artist and a very big 90s artist as well. It just happened to know, and they were saying, yeah, we got writing credit on that, and they just asked us, and I'm like thinking, okay, and it is quite similar. They probably would have said, hang on a minute, sounds a bit like our chorus. Much easier to do a deal. I don't know what the percentage is either, but I'm assuming it's quite low. And much less than they would have to pay if someone else came and said, oh, do you know what, I wrote that. So I have a feeling there's a bit of damage limitation. Anyway, that's just cynical music industry speak. I'm sorry. If it's completely off.
I mean, I've had suspicions before, and this is just completely, you know, I can say it's true. I've even got people that say it's true. I have a thing on SoundCloud that I put together, and I used the Nightmare on Elm Street theme music, the horror movie Nightmare on Elm Street, the intro music for that. And this is like way long time ago when all I had was a broken MPC 1000 and I didn't know anything. So I just had sampled this thing and I used it. And about 2 or 3 years, maybe 2 years ago, an album was released, a hip hop album by Jadakiss and Fabulous, and it was called Jason versus Freddy. And I'm not even kidding you. It's the same exact arrangement that I used in my track. And on top of that, the views jumped 500. So I had like 18 views. It jumped 500 views at the same time.
Whoa. Well, there you go. I might pursue that one if I were you. Crikey.
I can't prove it, but if you listen to it, I'll send it to you after this. I'll send you both, and you can hear it. It's astonishing, really. You would think that I copied them, is what you would think.
Wow. Yeah, you see that? I mean, I don't know if you listen to the Katy Perry one. It's very tenuous, and it's one line with a similar sound. That's not a songwriting credit, you know. Whereas something like that, I'm completely against blatant copying. Yeah, absolutely. In fact, we did for my sins, I did an MC Hammer mix, which doesn't appear on my bio anywhere. But we decided to tip the hat to anyone that we thought could do with some more royalties, or people that we respect. So we sat there and said, right, rather than sample anything that we can think of, who would we really like to get some royalties here? And we used the break out of Word Up by Cameo, because we really loved Cameo at the time, and we thought the guy in Cameo was just the business. So he got the writing credit on that one. Tribe Called Quest on Can I Kick It, the writing credit goes to Lou Reed for the intro. I don't know if you know the tune, but it's got like a very classic Walk on the Wild Side intro. There's also, though, Ian Dury and the Blockheads, Archie Bell and the Drells, Prokofiev, a sample from Prokofiev is in it, all sorts of crazy stuff. When you actually list it out, it's fascinating. But so MC Hammer ended up playing the guy out of Cameo a nice wedge for the mix that we did.
Where I could do this every week with you for an hour, and we'd probably never run out of with you and your history. I'm sure you've been through it all, and I really do appreciate you.
Thank you.
Being a part of this, and I know that a couple people have been in here, and they're happy to see you here too. So, It's
It's
very
been an
much
absolute pleasure. Thanks, Will. I really, really love you. Thanks for considering me. You're doing a
no
great
problem.
job. I wish you every success in the future as well.
Thank you. And to everybody that's here, anybody that watches my channel, thank you guys very much. Leave any comments. If you got any questions for Dominic, I'll certainly shoot them over to him. But yeah, it's been a great show. And thanks again, Dom, for helping me out. Appreciate it very much.
Thanks to you too. And thanks for everyone watching. Take it easy.
Take care, everybody. See ya.